It's very exciting, but I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy thinking out loud,
Yeah.
spitballing. So it seems to me that if you had magnetic control through the skin, then you could back something out before it gets into trouble, right?
So let's give some credit. So I have some heroes to reference. If you look at Atlas Endoscopy, you've got Pietro Baldastri doing amazing work with external magnetic fields and soft robotics. It's sort of like a tentacle-like endoscope that's
Huh.
piloted by, sort of actuated by external magnetic fields. And then the closest direct competition to Endiatx is this amazing technology called Navicam, which is FDA cleared. They're in the market right now.
Uh-huh.
They use external magnetic fields to fly camera pills around.
Hey there, welcome to the Recharge Biomedical podcast. I'm Dr. Edward Park, and if you're curious about regenerative medicine, you've come to the right place. We're diving into the latest breakthroughs in telomerase activation, stem cell exosomes, and all the cutting-edge science that's shaping the future of healing and longevity. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Recharge Biomedical Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Edward Park, and we're joined by Tori Smith, the brilliant man up in East Bay, Hayward. How are you doing, Tori?
Doing fine. Glad to be here, Ed.
Excellent. So this young man was on stage in front of 400 people last week, and he swallowed a pill. It was his second pill, and it's not small. It's a difficult pill to swallow, as they say literally and figuratively. But we watched as the pill went down and sloshed around his stomach, and it was amazing. And he just did it with such aplomb, and it was unfazed, and it was like, oh my God, this guy's really doing it. So assuming it wasn't some kind of fake NASA project, I assume you swallowed a pill and we were looking inside your stomach, right? Oh my God, there it is.
Yeah, so basically, I dug this out of my pocket. So this is Pillbot. Pillbot
Nice.
is basically a drone that you can swallow. And basically, what we've done is we're very inspired by the world of pill cameras. And so we
Yeah.
asked ourselves, could we make a pill camera move? And we basically just, tried to take drone technology and filter it through med device with a little bit of deep tech. And
Wow.
what you get out the other side of that is a little swimming robot. But we really hope it's the beginning of so much more than that. It's a moving eyeball in the human stomach, but in my mind, it's a platform to do a whole new kind of medicine inside the body.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, just to get people caught up. So for people that don't know, there have been ingestible cameras, but they were passive. So what you've developed is a self-propelled camera, which can shoot back 480 by 480, 10 frames per second, an image. And it'll come out, of course, in the stool, single use. And it's beautiful. So you can control it, I presume, like a little rocket ship in the X, Y, and Z axis. So what is the method of propulsion?
We use pump jets, and what that really means is just small electric motors that instead of vibrating old Nokia cell phones, we just remove those little weights, we put on some custom propellers, and we squirt water. And so we build these little robots in such a way that they kind of float more or less neutrally in a column of water, and then with little puffs of pump jet power, we can start to move around.
Amazing, amazing. And we'll talk about the applications in a sec, but was there anything in your childhood that would have predicted you making this? I
Probably,
wonder.
probably the movie Inner Space more than anything else. I
Oh,
just lots of aerospace lore in my childhood. Lots of sci-fi. Lots of science news, Scientific American, but also like popular mechanics, popular science. Like I I I love movies. I love where people dream, and I even read
yeah.
a lot of comic books and like astounding science fiction. Right? If you add all that up, then you have this milliverse, or this milieu rather
Right.
of cool ideas floating around in your head. And I think a lot of people have dreamt about tiny robot surgeons in the body.
Yeah, but not many people have brought it to market. I mean, you're on the verge of making this a commercial success. So
Well,
that's exciting. So
I
I'm a generation older than you. I remember Raquel Welch in the submarine and
fantastic
Fantastic
voyage.
Voyage. You had to
Yeah,
go back into the archives to watch that.
there.
But Inner Space, I got to check that out. So,
Oh, it's
so you were always like, were you a double E engineer guy, mechanical engineer guy, or just an imagination guy?
I'm an aerospace engineer out of Cal Poly SLO,
Okay.
and I just love their learn by doing approach. Right, their wind tunnel was covered in stickers, and they used McDonald's straws to straighten out the streamlines at the front of the intake. instead of like this expensive expanded metal hex grid. And I just thought that was so creative, right? Because it essentially more or less did the same exact thing, but for the price of free, and it gave all these students access to amazing wind tunnel technology. And I just feel like so much of engineering and R&D is kind of chasing your instincts and then using your computational power on the computer side to try to
Yeah.
line up with the raw equations and the theory. Um, Try to line that up with what you're seeing on the experimental bench, but hopefully in your heart, in your mind, you have sort of a sense of where things might need to be and where you want to
Yeah.
go.
I think it's amazing. And, so this conference we were both at, as my first, you've probably been, it was called Abundance 360 by Peter Diamandis. And it was 3 days of really innovative, futuristic people. And you on the stage eating or swallowing the Pillbot, amazing. But I think my hat is off to people who are willing to imagine something that doesn't exist and have the fortitude and the teamwork to bring it to market. So let's talk about the applications. You said on your website, it might cost $2,000 to do an endoscopy. I think that's a lowball estimate considering the anesthesia and the GI costs. What do you think?
I mean, people might quote you $1,500 or $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, but really what you're looking at for an upper endoscopy is 3, 4, 5 trips to a hospital, from symptom onset to, primary care to referral to GI to diet, antacids, finally qualify for the upper endoscopy.
Yeah.
5 minutes into looking around in their stomach, they'll tell you exactly what they see or what they don't see. And
Yeah.
we just ask
And
ourselves,
let me play the devil's advocate here because,
please.
anesthesia is not benign. They can do conscious sedation, but there's still choking risk and whatnot.
Sure.
But especially in the older people with a sort of calcified, not such great circulation, like, anesthesiologists will never tell you this, but people don't always wake up the same when they undergo these procedures. And I have a patient who had a terrible onset of tinnitus after a 5-hour procedure. So, it's good, it's safe, and if you need it, yes. But certainly mitigating or even removing general anesthesia is huge.
Our whole
Comment?
thought is if there's value in giving the gastroenterology community an ability to fly into someone's body and look around, in their stomach specifically as we begin, if there's value in making that, available, we can probably extend it into telemedicine very easily. I mean, we already demo Pillbot via telemedicine at the R&D level every day here at Endiatx. We've even had a doctor in New Zealand control Pillbot here in our San Francisco Bay Area facility over the internet connection. So just the scalability and kind of the dematerialization of traditional physical hospital footprint is pretty exciting to us.
It's huge. Yeah. And, I have a patient who lives in Los Gatos, and he makes software for hospitals to overcharge. So if you get hit by a car in South Korea, you might get charged $20,000 for a surgery and a hospitalization. Here, it might be $1 million. So the point is, there are so many points of interaction with the hospital system, the pre-op, the workup, the blah, 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 even the biopsy, the pathology. Let me again play the devil's advocate. So I assume by the time it reaches the large colon, you have all that chyme and you can't see anything, or you can't see, the S word, literally. That's all you can see. So it's really more of an upper GI application, I would think. True?
So for the super exciting Apple product-like experience, it's the human stomach, right? You skip your breakfast, you drink a bunch of water, like 2 pints, would easily do it. You swallow a Pillbot, and boom, you're having this virtual upper endoscopy experience with no seeming real cost to the patient.
I love it. I think it's exciting.
Situation.
I don't know if the old guys, the old GIs, can use an Xbox controller well, but maybe they'll have some young guy do it. I don't know.
And I should say that we're under we're in clinical trials. We're not yet cleared through FDA. So what I'm describing is what we're trying to build or what we're testing at the R&D level. We can send Pillbot deeper into the body actively, But
Yeah,
if we want the entire GI tract, you're probably looking at doing a full prep so that you don't get caught up in all the mud that accumulates
correct.
as you get
So let
down.
me deconstruct that for the
Yeah.
non-medical person. So a bowel prep is you drink some kind of intense laxative. For me, if I have a mango smoothie, it's the same thing. But you're basically on the toilet for like 8, 12 hours and you just have diarrhea. And it cleans you out pretty lickety split, like clean. So in the lower colon, even in the nooks and crannies, there's not much poop. So it's just liquid diarrhea. And, it's go lightly. I don't know why they named it, but it's pretty funny. So you can't, so you're saying, well, the problem is that there isn't really the liquid medium to swim around in the large bowel. The whole point of the large bowel is to remove water and make it a dry, hard poop, right? So you'd have to if you did an enema, then you could create, in 6, 8 hours it's going to be in the colon. Then you give them an enema, then they could swim, right?
The way that we can do this in the colon for, say, like a Pillbot colonoscopy would be you would send a patient to a colonic clinic where they
Correct.
basically use warm water basically to just
Yeah,
rinse
you got to
out.
give it something to swim in.
Right.
Okay.
You give
So
Pillbot a medium to swim in. That would be a way to do it without a direct prep, but starting in the stomach is so much more fun because it's just skip your breakfast, drink water, and you're good to go.
now let me play the devil's advocate again because I think the devil is in the details. So what the applications here, obviously, esophagitis, like varices of the esophagus, some sphincter dysfunction going into the stomach ulcers or other cancers, neoplasms, the duodenal sphincter, and then the upper duodenum. But then you got that 12 feet of small intestine or 18 feet.
Yeah.
You're not going to see much in there usually. I mean,
So
then your large intestine, once you make it through the cecum, you got to fill up at a colonic site to get water in there. So potentially you could see diverticulosis. You could see other tumors in the large intestine. So you could get both bang for your buck, upper and lower GI, right?
we could do that, but it makes a lot
Right
of
now you're
sense.
just set up for upper. Okay.
We just look at the upper endoscopy and say, wow,
Yeah.
there's 70 million, 75 million of these around the world every year that we
Yeah.
think Pillbot could either replace or just augment as a screening tool that sort of activates
Absolutely.
earlier.
So the question is, in medicine, we always say, well, for neoplasm, we want a tissue biopsy. But right now, Pillbot is not set up to take a tissue biopsy.
Not yet.
That's
We
another
call
bit
that-
of engineering magic. I'm
we
sure
call
it's
that pill
coming.
surgeon. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure that's
pill
coming.
surgeon. We just got a important patent granted to that effect.
We age because our telomeres shorten and our stem cells deplete. But what if we could support both? I've been taking TA65 for 17 years. It's the only supplement I trust to support better mood, better sleep, and exercise recovery. And at age 57, I don't have any gray hair and I don't need reading glasses. TA65 is available now. Go to rechargebiomedical.com/TA-65 and enter promo code RECHARGE10 to save 10% off.
We're here to stay, right? My personal mission, right? All I can tell you is
Yeah.
I'm Tori Smith. Hi. My personal mission is micro-robotics in the human body. And
I
I
love
want to
it.
go everywhere in the human body. I want to go into blood vessels. I want to go into your
I love
brain.
it.
I want to go interstitial. But thank goodness for the human stomach because we can
Yeah.
begin there with a tangible start. We call that pill.
All right, let's close it up on Pillbot. So, there's some people with diverticulosis. If they eat peanuts, they can get diverticulitis. It gets stuck in one of the.
Yeah.
Is that a theoretical risk for your size profile?
It's a contraindication. So if you have diverticulitis or known strictures or certain types of surgeries you've had in the GI tract, those are all kind of contraindications for a camera pill. And
Yeah.
our goal is to have the exact same contraindications for Pillbot as a typical capsule.
Camera pill. So how long have camera pills been in the market?
First one was swallowed October 1997 and FDA cleared in 2001, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And so we're
Yeah.
actually kind of coming up on about 25 years
Amazing.
here.
Yeah. So I would assume that the stuff it's made of is inert and the actual functioning in the field is inert in terms of light, heat, EMF. It's not going to hurt anybody.
We do a lot of work on the biocompatibility side, just from the materials that we choose. I have to say that we have had an immense boon coming in from the 3D printing world. If you
Yeah.
look at Max's company, Formlabs, a friend of mine, He started this company, Formlabs, that kind of brought SLA resin 3D printing to the masses. But they have this whole line of biocompatible resins that we've been using that are passing biocompatibility. And it means that we can be 3D printing amazing, complex mechanical robotic geometries, and then we send them out for bio and they pass.
Amazing.
And there's nothing trivial about this. I mean,
Amazing. Yeah. No, I mean,
in the company.
so that's 27 years in the past someone swallowed a pill camera. But the benefit of the Pillbot is that, a pill camera, you might just go by and it'd be like, you're driving on a tour bus. There's the Eiffel Tower. You don't really see what you need to see. You can move it around. And in the future, you'll be able to biopsy. But can you deliver a package? Like, let's say I like exosomes. So if I want to put exosomes in a stomach ulcer, that's coming too, right? Because there's only 3 times I've used exosomes swallowed, and that's when someone had esophagitis and peptic ulcer. And but eventually, can the Pillbot deliver the payload?
Yeah, that's what we call Pill Surgeon. Pill Surgeon is the magic school bus. It actually does things. But the difference between Pillbot and a camera pill is about 100 times the size of the total addressable market.
Because why?
Because it moves.
Right. It's not just like if you're in the wrong angle and you don't see the lesion in the
So we're not competing with camera pills.
Okay.
We're trying to create the world's first virtual endoscope.
Very exciting. So we'll come back to your product and your ramp up and your commercialization, but let's pivot to what you alluded to, which is the general idea of miniaturization, right? So I deal with exosomes, which are 30 to 150 nanometers. And it's hard for people to wrap their head around what size we're talking about. So when you talk about white blood cell, that's like 13,000 nanometers. It's relatively large. So if you talk about the computer chip in your computer, the structures are 3 to 5 nanometers now. So I don't even know how they do that. It kind of boggles my mind. But if we follow the logical conclusion out that Tori's going to get funded, he's going to be viable, and he's going to keep on making things smaller and smaller, there's one big tube from the mouth to the anus, but there are tubes everywhere. One of the big applications you allude to is like from Fantastic Voyage. You get a clot in your neck or whatnot. You want to look around the heart. But the problem I have with going around those slightly, smaller tubes is obviously embolization. Like the way, in case people don't know, arteries get, smaller and smaller as they go away from the heart, and veins get smaller or bigger and bigger as they go towards the heart. So if you get a thing that's too small and it causes a nidus for clot formation, you have tissue damage potentially if there's no anastomosis or collaterals.
It's really non-trivial. I spent 9 years of my life designing the Phoenix atherectomy system that cuts plaque out of arteries. But we did all of our work there in the arteries of the lower extremities. So we were in arteries of the legs heading down into the feet. And, if you would have some terrible problem, if you perforate or if you, cause some embolism or knock some plaque loose accidentally, it would go downstream to the feet where you could sort of deal with it. It's not like it's going into the brain, which is like terrifying, right? And that was an appropriate arena to perfect atherectomy technology.
Nice.
So all I will say is that I want to go everywhere. I think one thing we might do is like, say we want to go into the brain and fight a brain cancer. That's cool. But maybe we could go kill a prostate cancer first with some, sort of like entry level version of
No, absolutely. It's very exciting. But, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy thinking out loud, spitballing. Yeah. So it seems to me that if you had magnetic control through the skin, then you could back something out before it gets into trouble, right?
So let's give some credit. So I have some heroes to reference. If you look at Atlas Endoscopy, you've got Pietro Baldastri doing amazing work with external magnetic fields and soft robotics. It's sort of like a tentacle-like endoscope that's piloted by, sort of actuated by external magnetic fields. And then the closest direct competition to Endiatx is this amazing technology called Navicam, which is FDA cleared. They're in the market right now. They use external magnetic fields to fly camera pills around.
Yeah, because you don't want your camera pill that you put in the groin getting to the heart, doing the heart surgery, and then embolizing to your carotid. That would be a stroke, yeah?
Well, the amazing thing about Navicam is that they're in the stomach too, just like us. But they get this great three-dimensional control from the magnetic field, and then people are doing this beyond the GI tract, like Bionaut Labs, funded by Peter Diamandis's Bold Capital Partners. They have microscopic helical swimmers that are magnetically actuated. The the differentiation, though, that the unique thing that we're trying to add to this conversation, as we stand on the shoulders of these giants, is self actualization. Like, I want these robots to move under their own power. I want them to be decoupled from capital equipment. I want them to be decoupled from the hospital, right? I want this to be a package that could be the size of, like maybe a deck of cards.
Yeah,
They
yeah. But like at the
molecule-
capillary level, like let's say nature has its own nanobots, right? White blood cells. And so they move by
That's
amoeboid,
those are.
right? They move by amoeboid fashion, diapedesis. They can squeeze through the nooks and crannies. I mean, I don't know what the limits of mechanical biomimicry are, but probably you're not going to get that good in the near future. But what you can do is make them so small, like nanites, like really so small. But the question is, what's the freeway like? If you're in the bloodstream and you're pumping at 160 over 80, that's a lot of flow to swim against, isn't it?
I think I personally can be involved in robots that go down to rice grain size, which is still
That's still
huge
huge, yeah.
compared
But
to some of the stuff you're talking about. So my personal ambitions are probably to drive to rice grain size and see what that world's like. All I will say is that so long as human beings, or robots for that matter, are actually cutting into the human body with scalpels, right?
yeah,
As long as we're making incisions and poking tools, sliding tubes for laparoscopic surgery, as long
yeah,
as we're putting instruments into the human body, the question I'm going to ask is, could we potentially have the tip of that instrument, that just the cutting element, in the form of a micro-robot, minus the entire stack behind it, including the hospital, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's what I'm really trying to go here is like, let's leave a world where we do a brain surgery by doing an incision, removing a part of your skull, going in with scalpels and trying to cut out a piece of a brain tumor. Let's ask ourselves, could that be could that same brain tumor have 6, 7, 12 little microbots eating away at it, 24/7?
No, I think it's brilliant. And there have been attempts at like antibody labeling, immune therapy for cancer, leveraging the immune system to target. But, as
That's
one of the speakers was talking about
that's amazing.
CBI, which is computer brain interface, and he put up that brilliant slide of, neural stem cells in a hydrogel and mating it to your brain to become a Borg.
And
Oh,
science.
is that your buddy? Okay, yeah, he's
Well,
brilliant.
no,
But
no. I am a fanboy of Max Hodak. I was extremely grateful to be able to hang out with him a little bit at the event, and
yeah.
I was honored, to spend a few minutes here and there with him. But
But he was very forthright with the fact that the brain is kind of squishy and solid. So the minute you start going in there with the tip of your instrument or your nanobots, you're doing damage. And even
yeah,
though he'll be the first to admit you can't take it out, there's no take backs, it's growing in, it's making its dendrites, its connections. But that's not a technique I just returned my Galaxy ring because I was like, this is making me too neurotic. But when you
Max
actually,
immediately, like
yeah,
he
if you're at rice grain size, you're doing brain damage. So who's going to
absolutely.
do the cleanup crew? Who's going to clean up after the elephants go down the parade? That's the problem.
So first of all, Max directly said, the tiny cells in our body are like little tiny alien machines, right? And he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
My kind of response to that is, well, we're still cutting people open and doing major invasive brain surgeries, right? And what I'm trying to do is replace the major invasive surgery with microbots. So you might be able to take the invasiveness of modern, intensive surgery. You might be able to take that down by an order of magnitude, say, which is not to zero. It's just a substantial reduction. Like, one of the microbots I envision might leave a tissue tract behind like a large needle stick,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
non-trivial. but it
No.
might be much better than the surgical cut down to gain access to the
Oh,
interior.
listen, I'm not Luddite. I mean, as someone who used to cut people open and sew them up, I mean, there's something to be said to be able to improvise on the spot. If the intern cuts an artery, But yeah,
Yeah.
the trend has been generally towards laparoscopic, arthroscopic. We're talking, 5 to 7, sometimes 3 millimeters, and robotics too, which a lot of the older surgeons don't like. But there can be advantages, limiters in how many errors and what kind of errors you can make. But what you're talking about is having a drone symphony in the sky, over the Shenzhen or whatever. Like they can organize and work together in a way that is less invasive, faster recovery. But still, as a surgeon, I'm thinking like, what if they cut an artery? So, there's always going to be the art of it.
What I want to do is kind of approach the eventual handshake that takes place, right? Eventually,
Yeah.
the world of the biological and the world of the mechanical are going to do a handshake at some order of magnitude.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm many orders of magnitude away from that with Pillbot. Even at the rice grain size, we still remain many orders of magnitude away.
Yeah.
However, what I'm trying to demonstrate and what we are trying to demonstrate with this company is that we can actually cut the cord on the capital equipment in the hospital. We can operate small robots inside the human body.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of growing room to get even smaller and more sophisticated. So we hope that we're kind of kicking off a new market category of micro-robotics in the human body.
I think you are. And follow the money. Like, let's think about what you said about the cost of these. I mean, you could have someone in Zimbabwe swallow a pill, and someone at the Mayo Clinic can direct the local use of that through the internet. And, there you go. You're saving money. The whole system benefits. And I would argue that you don't really need a tissue biopsy in most cases. A lot of the things, humans, the eye, maybe with AI image analysis, perhaps we'll be able to make most of the diagnosis within a range of comfortable, predictable security, I think.
You can do a lot visually, but we also are, very excited to lean into lab-on-chip technology. My friend Wojtek Paprota is doing photospectroscopy inside the human body using chips that he implants into his arm. And
Amazing.
They get interrogated by a smartwatch with RFID. And you're getting like hundreds of biomarkers without any like active onboard power source.
No. I mean, it's breathtaking. People wear these glycemic things, but you could have something that's more accurate in your system doing real-time monitoring for sure.
And
so,
I have to give some credit to another company, Robote, who just closed their Series A. They're already at the rice grain size in the human brain. I think they're doing like mice rat brains right now. But
Wow.
Joanna Cartocci and their CEO Bertrand Duplat, based in Paris, it looks like they're going to be setting up shop here in the United States. They're actually doing in-brain microbots with their own technology. I think they have a little bit of a connection to hospital equipment, but
Wow.
it's just drastically lower levels of intrusion compared to the traditional cut down, right?
No, but obviously there is a limit to miniaturization, but we're nowhere near that. I mean, if they can make computer chips out of 3 to 4 nanometer, ICs.
I mean, Richard Feynman said there's plenty of room at the bottom, right? And he also recommends that we swallow the surgeon, right? That's
it's cute.
I feel like it's kind of a call to action. I think that my future may involve, exotic forms of power, shall we say?
Let's talk about that for a second. So, there's this conspiracy theory out there that there's something called graphene, which is self-assembling. But we know from nature that microtubules, which form the structure of all cell cytoskeletons and the machinery of mitosis, these are self-assembling little things too, like those little magnetic toys. So I know there's paranoia over graphene. Is the government putting it in stuff that we eat or whatever? What's your opinion about self-assembling graphene and its ability to be controlled?
I mean, I've been following graphene and nanotubes and colossal carbon nanotubes, ever since I first started learning about the possibility of doing a space elevator. And when you look at
Space elevator. That
when,
don't make no sense to me. Yeah, but space elevator. Okay.
when you look at the tensile strength required to basically hang an asteroid or some kind of space station at tension beyond, the where a geostationary satellite would be, where it's 1 to 1. If you have a station beyond that point, it's going to want to escape, and if you hang a
Yeah.
10,
Right.
you basically can create a space elevator, and you just
Yeah.
hang up like an elevator. And the only problem is that the tensile strength of a material required goes beyond anything known on Earth until people started looking at some of the numbers associated with graphene and
Interesting. Oh, it can be that strong and
and
coherent
so
and organized. Okay.
it's just kind of interesting, right? And it's
It
not like
is.
a space elevator is necessary for us to leap into the next phase of our technological development, but um, there is a lot of work yet to do in the fields of material science, in advanced physics. I mean, we are getting tantalizingly close to room temperature superconductors, right?
Yeah. Fascinating.
There's just an incredible renaissance unfolding for
Well,
like
I mean, if you believe the people who say Tesla was a genius, apparently he's tried to patent radiant energy harvesting. So,
my friends and I built a very large Tesla coil once and took it out to the desert to hang out with about 80,000 people, and that was a
this sounds
hit.
like Burning Man.
That was a hit for sure. Um, I think Tesla is a really interesting character because he clearly made incredible contributions to the world, like three-phase power, the Tesla
Right.
coil itself, a lot of power transmission things. And then he was certainly an eccentric guy who, as a bit of a loner, probably had that magnified a little bit. I think there's a little bit of lore and, maybe a little bit of mysticism
So
associated.
you've never read the radiant energy patent. Okay, so I greeted you earlier on, Mr. Smith. You said Mr. Anderson. So let's talk about the matrix. So for people that don't know, your refrigerator and your watch and your thermometer and your phone all know a lot about you, and someone's watching you. But I remember going to a presentation at Renaissance Weekend like 10 years ago. The guy was talking about the Internet of Things. Now, at this point, people are wired. Things can be wired, smart devices, but the miniaturization, I heard there were rice grain size or smaller backdoor vulnerabilities in servers that being sent out of China to the US. So this whole thing about nanoscale or really small stuff that you don't know is there, it's not just for peeping toms, it's like for the government too. So do you think people have, no one ever reads a EULA, end user license agreement. When I click, I want that app to play, some little Candy Crush, I'm sending my data to the CCP, to Peter Thiel, and they're abstracting it. So do people have a right to privacy on the nanoscale? Or if you eat something from a Smithfield strip of bacon and somehow they didn't tell you on page 182 that there's a nanobot in there, do we have a right to refuse this tech, or is it coming whether we like it or not?
Well, HIPAA laws are pretty darn powerful, right? Like a lot of the work that we do on the cybersecurity front is just demonstrating that we are actually capable of handling information at that level, and treating it ethically and responsibly. I think one of the first things that we can do with the Pillbot ecosystem is make the amazing data you get from one of these cases available to the patient immediately on their phone, right? So instead of feeling like there are several layers of bureaucracy between you and what just happened to you, we want to make sure that when you do a Pillbot procedure, you immediately get the cool, exciting,
Oh,
fun
no, it's awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Then, with regards to keeping that appropriately private, that's an incredible conversation right there because on the one hand, let's absolutely honor that. And then on from another perspective, I don't think the medical community will have ever had access to the amount of data that the Pillbot ecosystem is going to create. Just because you're taking something that's really hard to do, an upper endoscopy, you're going to turn that into something that's really easy to do, like maybe 100 times easier, cheaper, more accessible, etc. So with that flood of data that's inevitably coming, my goodness, I think there's a lot of value there. I think we're going to be able to train up models to sort of do a lot of the boring work with more automated tools.
I mean,
right?
I think it's great. I mean, ethically good, safety good. Cost savings, good. So the question is, a good day for the lion is an evil day for the lamb. So will the gastroenterologist be able to monetize this? I mean,
one of the very first things we did with this company is we read the tombstone, epitaphs of all the companies that have failed in and around this space. Like Proteus Digital Health was doing electronic pills. That didn't work out. People have tried to do pills in the stomach, just camera pills, and those had issues in the U.S. market for gastroenterologist uptake rate reasons. So right from the beginning, we basically sat down and we said, look, we want to make this amazing technology, these little robot drones that can actually swim around. It's super cool. But from the very beginning, we have to make a tool that a gastroenterologist is going to be really excited to use, that is going to immediately make them more money than they would make using the existing tools around them.
There you go. Yeah, you got to align the incentives. Yeah.
Right. If we can pull that off, then Pillbot will actually get used, and that'll be good for us. But we had to actually put ourselves directly into the shoes of a gastroenterologist. Like, how many years did it take for you to become a gastroenterologist? How many years have you been practicing?
No, I mean, people, they become Luddites, right? For sure.
Like you own this clinic with some buddies, like the amount of weight pressing down on a GI is incredible. And if we don't understand their world, there's no way we're going to come up with a product they actually want to use. And so,
well, that's great. I mean, I was talking to this guy, and he was saying this lady was selling donkey milk for whatever gut biome stuff, and she thought the FDA or the U.S. Ag was coming after her. It was actually someone's brother-in-law who was like a, milk farmer. So you never know what the inadvertent consequences. It's really good that you consider that. But so as far as Pillbot's entry into the market, I assume that you're pretty far down the FDA approval. Are you still looking for investment partners?
All I would say is we're really excited to have our new CEO, Arman Nader-Shahi, who has this incredible history in really advanced healthcare tech. He's been through it all. He has put us on a laser path to revenue through FDA. So yeah, we're under, we're entering our more official clinical trials. We've been doing IRB clinical trials up till now. Hope maybe like 12 to 18 months to get our first product into the market.
That's amazing. Like that. And just so people know, you've been at this for 6 years, assembling the skill, the materials, doing the testing, the reiteration. So this is a great blessing to mankind and the fruition of a lot of work on your part. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. It was a dream for more than 6 years though, right? So I spent more time dreaming about Pillbot than I have spent actually building Pillbot with this team. And that should be a lesson to the prospective founders out there, which is if you have an idea that's just burning a hole in your brain and the world seems crazy because it's not being done, you should probably launch the company, right? And don't wait until you feel like you're ready. Like if you have an idea that's real, go for it. What you have to lose is waking up and realizing that you're a CEO and that you just learned some hard lessons.
That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. My hat is off to you, serial entrepreneur, inventor, dreamer. It's amazing. Tori Smith, thank you so much for enlightening us. We'll look for Pillbot and your other amazing bots in the future. I think it's going to be a real blessing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Recharge Biomedical podcast. If today's episode got you thinking, you'll love my book, Exosomes Songs of Healing. It's packed with cool analogies, full color illustrations, and all the science you'll need to understand how exosomes are changing the game in aging and regenerative medicine. You can grab it in paperback, ebook, or audiobook, whatever works for you. Now head over to www.rechargebiomedical.com to check it out. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you next time.